Well, we're getting very close to the end of this custom reptile habitats build project that I've been working on. It's really intensely for the last 6 weeks, but really I've been working on it for about a year now. For those who have been following the channel for a long time, you know that. This is the background of the podcast, the Animals at Home podcast, and we have 5 enclosures in total. We've already done 3 boas. We did the jungle carpet python a couple weeks ago, and now we're finishing off with the crested gecko. My 18-year-old crested gecko, Jaxson, my very first reptile, so I'm so excited to give him a new enclosure. This is literally the first time he'll be moved in his entire life, which is incredible. If you like the look of these enclosures and would like to potentially pick one up yourself, you can head to the affiliate link in the YouTube description. Custom Reptile Habitats is a sponsor of the channel, so if you do make a purchase using that link, a commission comes back to me at no extra cost to you, and of course that helps me produce the podcast and videos like this one. As fun as this project of putting these 5 enclosures together has been, I am very much looking forward to finishing it, and that's probably demonstrated by the fact that I didn't film a ton of this process. I really just wanted to get it done. You guys know how busy I am. I try to get an episode of the podcast out every single week. That takes a ton of my time. This channel and the podcast is not my job. This is something I do on the side, so I try to squeeze everything in. So having said that, there was some, missing footage in this, we'll say. So I started off this project with a quick water test of the enclosure. The other 4 snake enclosures I would not call bioactive. They're naturalistic. They have live plants, but I don't have a giant base of soil growing plants. They all have sort of reservoirs for plants. This one will be planted right into the base of the tank, so I really wanted to make sure that it actually holds water. If you remember at the beginning of this series, I talked about the product that these specific custom reptile habitat enclosures are made out of. Now, you don't have to get this product if you do buy one. You can choose just regular PVC, but these ones are made out of the product called Acre, which is a sort of 40% rice husk PVC composite. So it acts very similar to PVC, but also acts like wood because you can drill it easily and sand it and stain it, but it also repels water. You're not going to absorb water, and I'm just showing you here that the base does hold water because I did go around and silicone all the seams. Now, an interesting thing that I've noticed, as beautiful as universal rock backgrounds are, whenever I've used them for geckos, the geckos don't seem to go on them. You think, oh, that's a real nice sort of rough surface. You think geckos would be all over that. Anytime I've used them for geckos, the geckos avoid them. I don't know what it is. It could be that their feet actually don't adhere to the surface. I don't know why that would be. So in this enclosure, there's just a universal rock on the back wall, and we did DIY panels on each side. So I wanted to do something slightly different than just simply covering the spray foam with silicone and then adding substrate to sort of mask it. Instead, I really wanted to attempt to match that back rock, universal rock wall with dry lock and the dry brush method, which everybody has seen on the channel before, this channel or other channels. But essentially, I put a couple layers of dry lock down, tinted to a darker gray, and then I went back over with a relatively dry brush with just the light dry lock color untinted and brought out some definition in the walls. The issue with this was it was basically impossible not to get dry lock paint all over the vertical branches in the wood, which as I was doing it, I was thinking this is not going to look good, but then I had an idea to just sort of cover that up with moss, so that is what I did, and I think it actually turned out pretty cool. So once the background was done, the next thing I did was plant a golden pothos in the top left corner. Now, I used golden pothos because I already had it. It's been in my possession for several years now. I didn't want to have to go out and buy something new and quarantine it and do all that and treat it and whatnot. I knew this plant was clean. So what I did, and this is my hint for people who want to use golden pothos. Pothos is a great plant. It grows like a weed. It's very easy to keep, but the problem is it grows like a weed, and if you let it get carried away, it becomes very thick. The vines get really thick, and they will really take over everything. So what I've done here, and this is what I found that works, I actually keep the plant in the pot. So it's in a pot. I have cork bark kind of surrounding it, so it's a little bit hidden, so you can't tell. You're not seeing the sort of ugly looking pot, but the root mass is inside and contained in a pot. I find when I do that, the pothos stays a lot more controlled. If I were to plant that pothos, that root ball directly into the base, that plant would be insane in 6 months. It would just be all over the place. But when you actually keep that root ball condensed into one area and really not allow it to move, then it stays more controlled and the vines drop down, and it's still going to grow quite powerfully, but it's not going to take over everything. Now again, as I was saying earlier, I didn't record a ton of this, but really the next part of this was just the hardscape. So as usual, I love to throw a couple vertical branches in, and that's what I'm doing here. And then it was just all about putting in a ton of small branches. Now, Exoterra did a really great video years back where they actually went to New Caledonia and were kind of explaining what part of the tree or canopy that you'll find crested geckos in. And it's sort of this middle area. And in that area, there's tons of small twig type branches, lots of like real light trees. So I really wanted to fill that space up as much as possible with all these little branches. So after that, I filled the base with a drainage layer, screen, and substrate. It's classic. I don't need to go through that with you guys. You've probably seen that a million times. And I planted 3 or 4 Chinese evergreen plants, which are sort of roughly native to the New Caledonia. I actually don't know if they're found on New Caledonia themselves. It might be. I'm forgetting as of recording this, but around that area. So I tried to stick with plants that are roughly from that area. But the thing I love about that plant is they only grow 2 or 3 feet tall. This enclosure, by the way, is 3 feet tall, 2 feet wide, 2 feet deep. So they hopefully won't outgrow the enclosure, and if they do, it'll sort of be at the very max end of their height. It's going to be a while till they get there. And they also have very large leaves, so lots of sort of canopy shaded area will be created by those leaves for the gecko. And they also have a little bit of pink and a little bit of color, which is, I think, really nice. Now, the actual transition, putting the gecko into the enclosure, went really smoothly. Actually, I was a little bit kind of worried about how he was going to take that, but he adjusted fine. He was eating on the 3rd day, which was fantastic. He only uses the branches and the mass part of the enclosure in the nighttime when the lights go off. He seems to be sleeping on the glass. He's actually right over my shoulder right now, sleeping on the glass, which I find a bit peculiar. He might still be getting used to the new area, but that just means I don't have any good, exciting film to show you of him walking through the enclosure because he's just sleeping right on the glass. So I will be gathering footage over the next couple of weeks, and because this room is coming very close to being complete, there will be a proper room tour coming, and I'm going to go through each enclosure, and everything that I didn't film in this build, I'll explain there as well and kind of get into more detail. But I wanted to get this video out so everybody could see that this last project is basically complete. But please, if you are not subscribed to the channel, subscribe, because it will be a really neat room tour. There's a few other things that I haven't shown yet that I want to show. You know, not that exciting things. I have electrical organization in the back corner, which I think if you're a nerd and you have lots of animals, you'll find that interesting. And there's a few other sort of decor type things in this room that will be really interesting for you guys. That will all be included in a room tour. It's probably going to be a nice long video. So until then, I will see you in the next probably podcast, and the actual room tour will be later this fall. So please subscribe to the channel if you want to see that, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.